السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
حياكم الله. السلام الله عليكم. مساكم طيبين.
الله يبارك فيكم وجزاكم الله خيرا. حياكم الله تعالكم.
آمين. آمين فيكم. بارك الله. أستاذ الفاضل حياكم الله. نبدأ بكتاب الله.
تفضل.
نعم جزاكم الله خيرا. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. بعد. Indeed, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tonight with our noble teacher Ustādh Abu Musa Raha حفظه الله ta'ala, having the opportunity to be with him tonight to discuss one of the most fundamentals of our deen. The Salafi da'wah in Ghana is growing, and there is a need for this reminder to enable us to be steadfast upon the path of the Prophet ﷺ, be upon the pristine methodology. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because that upon Tawheed and Sunnah. Hence, the reason and the brain medium for this lecture, which is entitled Trials and Tribulations, Steadfastness upon the Sunnah in Times of Strangeness. فليتفضل أستاذ الفاضل مشكورا محجورا مسددا ومنصورا.
آمين. بارك الله فيكم وجزاكم الله خيرا. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. So without doubt, it pleases us to connect with our Salafi brethren, wherever they are within the world generally, and more specifically on this evening with our Salafi brothers that in Ghana. And we ask Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to spread a da'wah the Salafiyya within that land and all other lands of the Muslims. And we ask Allah Ta'ala to unite the heart of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in every time and every place. And the Allah Ta'ala, He is the one who is responsible for doing so. And indeed, He is the one who is capable of accomplishing all things. The title of the lecture this evening is regarding steadfastness, especially during the time of strangeness. And this strangeness is something which is experienced by the Muslims in every time and every place since the earlier days of Islam up until the time in which we live. Even in times wherein the Muslims may be experiencing some strength and prosperity, the reality is that in the grand scheme of things, the Muslims are strangers amongst the rest of the world's population. And this is based upon the well-known narration that comes on the authority of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بدأ الإسلام غريبا وسيعود قريبا كما بدأ وطوبى للغرباء. He said that Islam began as something strange, and it shall return to being something strange just as it began. So therefore, Tuba is for the strangers. Tuba is for the strangers. In another narration of the hadith that comes on the authority of Ibn Mas'ud, that it was said, وَمَنْ هُمْ يَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, and who are they, O Messenger of Allah? قَالَ الَّذِينَ يُصْلِحُونَ إِذَا فَسَدَ النَّاسِ, they are those who they rectify when the people have corrupted. They rectify and bring rectification when the people have caused corruption. وفي رواية عبد الله بن عمر, and likewise in the narration of Abdullah bin Amr, he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they are unasun salihun qalib, they are a small amount of righteous people, fi nasin su'un kathir, that are amongst a large amount of evil people. من يعصيهم أكثر ممن يعطيهم. That those who disobey them are more abundant than those who disobey them are more abundant than those who obey them. So the meaning of this strangeness, as you've heard in the title and its definition, then we have this narration that comes on the authority of Ayyad ibn Hamad, who said, خطبنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال, that the Messenger of Allah alayhi salam delivered a sermon to us in which he said, إن الله عز وجل أمرني أن أعلمكم ما جهلتم. That indeed Allah Ta'ala has commanded me to teach you that which you are ignorant of. ثم قال, then he said, صلى الله عليه وسلم, وإن الله نظر إلى أهل الأرض قبل أن يبعثني ومقتهم. That indeed Allah Ta'ala, he looked at and examined the people of the earth prior to his sending of me, and he hated them. He hated them. He despised all of them. He mentioned Arabahum wa Ajamahum, the Arabs amongst them and the non-Arabs amongst them. This is due to that which the people were steeped in from ignorance, from Jahiliyyah, Shirk, Kufr, and other than that, from those things that Allah Ta'ala hates and disavows. So Allah Ta'ala hated them. Arabahum wa Ajamahum, the Arabs amongst them and the non-Arabs amongst them. Illa baqaya min ahl kitab, except a small group that remained upon the pure methodology and religion from the people of the book. So therefore Islam, it began as something that was small in reality. It began as something that was strange in Mecca, and the people did not believe in it except a few of them. And the majority of the creation, they had enmity and they had hatred and rancor for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And thus they harmed him in Mecca. And they harmed his companions, those who had embraced Islam along with him. And thereafter, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala issued his command to his Prophet, and thus he migrated to Al-Madinah, Muhajiran, as an immigrant, migrating along with some of his companions. And even in this stage, in the earlier stages of it, meaning the earlier stages of the Madani period of Al-Islam, they were strangers. This was a period of strangeness until Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala made the people of Al-Madinah more abundant. He made the Muslims and the believers in Al-Madinah to be more abundant, as well as the rest of the various townships and provinces. Those who entered into Al-Islam, they became abundant in number. And thereafter, the people began to enter into the deen of Al-Islam afwajan, in large hordes and crowds, after Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had conquered Mecca at the hands of his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So therefore, the beginning stages of Al-Islam was that it was strange amongst the people. It was something new, something strange, something that they were unaccustomed to. And the majority of the people of the earth at that time were upon disbelief in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and shirk with Allah Azza wa Jal, and the worship of idols. They were upon the worship of Anbiya, of the prophets, the worship of the Salihun, trees, stones, and other than that. Concerning the meaning of Tuba, the ulama differ regarding it. Allah Ta'ala has mentioned within his book, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ طُوبَى لَهُمْ وَحُسْنُ مَآبٍ. Indeed, those who believe and work righteousness, Tuba is for them, as well as a goodly return. Ibn Abbas, he said regarding this ayah and the statement of Allah Ta'ala, Tuba lahum, he said, Farahun wa qurratu aynin. That Tuba, it is a reference to felicity and joy and the coolness of their eyes. Tuba, it means felicity and joy and the coolness of their eyes. It has also been stated that Tuba is a tree in Jannah. And this is based upon the narration that comes on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu ta'ala anhu عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن رجل قال, that a man said, Ya Rasulullah, Tuba liman ra'aka wa amana bik. He said, O Messenger of Allah, Tuba is for the one who has seen you and believed in you. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said in response, Tuba liman ra'ani wa amana bi. Thumma tuba, thumma tuba, thumma tuba. Liman amana bi wa lam yarani. He says, yes, Tuba is for the one who has seen me and believed in me. However, Tuba and Tuba again and Tuba again is for the one who believed in me and has not seen me. For the one who has believed in me even though he has not seen me. فقال له رجل. So a man said to him, وما Tuba? What is Tuba? What is this Tuba that you say is for the one who believes in you even though he has seen you, and you have multiplied that by 3 for the one who has seen, who believes in you even though he has not seen you? He said, alayhi wasalam, shajaratun fil jannah. It is a tree in paradise. The distance of the shade of this tree is that of what can be traveled in 100 years. Thiyab ahlul jannah, and its leaves are the clothing of the people of paradise. Tukhrij min akmamiha. Their clothing is extracted from its leaves. It has also been stated that Tuba is another name amongst the names of Jannah. Is a name amongst the names of Jannah. So who are these Ghuraba? Who are the strangers that are mentioned in this narration that the Messenger of Allah said, alayhi salam, that Tuba is for? The great Imam, Shaykh al-Islam al-Thani, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he mentioned, alayhi rahmatullah, that Ahlul Islam fin nasi Ghuraba, that the Muslims are strangers amongst the rest of the people. When you look at the reality of the affair, even though the Muslims today, they are somewhere around 2 billion or so, or slightly less, or perhaps slightly more. Naam, but in spite of that, yani, the world's population in relation to the number of Muslims, the Muslims are the minority. So therefore, Ahlul Islam, the people of Islam, the Muslims are strangers amongst the rest of the world. As Allah Ta'ala mentioned inside of his book, وَإِن تُطِعْ أَكْثَرَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ يُضِلُّوكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. If you were to obey the majority of the people of the earth, they will lead you astray, away from the straight path of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And يَتَّبِعُونَ إِلَّا ظَنَّ. Why? Because they don't follow anything except conjecture. وَإِنْ هُمْ إِلَّا يَخْرُصُونَ. And they are doing nothing but guesswork. Similarly, it has come on the authority of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that he said, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول الله يا آدم. The Messenger of Allah said, alayhi salam, that Allah Ta'ala, he will say, meaning on the day of judgment, يا آدم فيقول لبيك وسعديك والخير في يديك. He will say, I'm here at your service, O my Lord, and all good lies within your hands. Allah Ta'ala will say, أخرج بِعْتَ النَّارِ. Allah Ta'ala will say, take out from your offspring the portion of them that are designated for the fire. Adam, he will say, وَمَا بِعْتَ النَّارِ. What is the portion of my offspring that are for the hellfire? Allah Ta'ala, he will then say, مَنْ كُلِّ أَلْفٍ تِسْعَمِيَّةٍ وَتِسْعَةَ وَتِسْعِينَ. Out of every 1,999. Meaning out of every 1,000 of Adam's offspring, 999 of them are for the fire, whereas the rest of them are for the Jannah. So this shows you, when you examine it, the strangeness of the people of Islam in relation to the rest of the people of the dunya. He said, alayhi salam, فَذَاكَ حين يشيب الصغير. This is when the people hear this and they witness this exchange between Allah and our father Adam. That is the point wherein children will become gray-headed. وَتَدَعُ كُلَّ ذَاتِ حَمْلٍ حَمْلَهَا. And every pregnant female will drop her load. وَتَرَى النَّاسِ سُكَارَى وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى وَلَكِنْ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ شَدِيدٌ. And you will see the people walking about as though they are drunk or in a drunken state, whereas they are not drunken, but rather the punishment of Allah Ta'ala, it is severe. So Ibn Qayyim, he said that the people of Islam are strangers in relation to the rest of the people. He went on to say, alayhi rahmatullah, وَأَهْلُ الْإِيمَانِ بَيْنَ مُسْلِمِينَ غُرَبَاء. Whereas the believers, the true believers, are strangers amongst the Muslims. The true believers are strangers amongst the Muslims. Allah Ta'ala mentioned inside of his book, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Bedouins say, we believe. قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. The Bedouins say, we have attained Iman. We are true believers. Allah Ta'ala said, say, you are not true believers, but rather say, you are Muslims. You have embraced Islam. For Iman, true Iman on that level, has not yet entered into your hearts. وَإِن تُطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ وَلَا يَلِدْكُمْ مِنْ أَعْمَالِكُمْ شَيْئًا. But if you obey Allah and His Messenger, Allah will not allow any of your deeds to be lost. إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Indeed, Allah Ta'ala is all forgiving and merciful. So the true believers, they are strangers amongst the Muslims. Ibn Qayyim, he went on to say, وَأَهْلُ الْعِلْمِ فِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ غُرَبَاء. Whereas the ulama, the scholars, they are strangers amongst the true believers. The scholars are strangers amongst the true believers. Allah Ta'ala mentioned inside of his books, وَإِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. That it is only, as Ibn Taymiyyah he mentioned, whenever you hear a text beginning with إِنَّمَا, it is a lafz murakkab, it is a compound word that consists of inna, which is an ala at-tawkid, it is a tool of emphasis, and ma, which is a tool of negation. When you bring them together, they denote restriction. Now, and so you have in the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. It is only amongst the slaves of Allah that truly fear Him, those who have knowledge, the people of knowledge. Now, for those who do not have knowledge, they will not fear Allah Ta'ala as He should be feared. And the more knowledge that a person has, the more fear they will have of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. But then he mentioned, alayhi rahmatullah, wa ahlu sunnah alladhina yumayyizunaha min al-ahwa wal-bid'a hum ghuraba. Whereas the people of sunnah, those who they distinguish what is truly sunnah, from desires and innovations, those people of sunnah are strangers amongst the people. They are strangers amongst the people. For this reason, Sufyan al-Thawri alayhi rahmatullah, who died in the year 161 after the Hijrah, he said, "Istawsu bi ahl sunnah khayra." He said, treat ahl sunnah kindly. Treat ahl sunnah kindly. فَإِنَّهُمْ غُرَبَاء. For indeed they are strangers amongst the people. To the point that Sufyan said, alayhi rahmatullah, that if you hear about a man of sunnah in the eastern parts of the earth or the western parts of the earth, then send salams to him. فَإِنَّهُمْ غُرَبَاء. For indeed they are strangers. Indeed they are strangers. Mention الشائع اعتقاد أهل السنة مع الألكائي. It's mentioned in some lines of poetry in Nuniyya لا توحشنك غربة بين الورى فالناس كالأموات في الحسبان. Do not be disturbed by the strangeness that you find amongst the people. Because the strangeness, ayyuhal ikhwa, it can become something which is somewhat disheartening if a person is not focused, if a person does not know and understand the reality of the affair. A person can become disheartened and be disturbed by way of that and feel isolated and saddened. But do not be disturbed by the strangeness that you find amongst the people. فَالنَّاسُ كَالْأَمْوَاتِ فِي الْحُسْبَانِ. For the people are like dead bodies, according to what we reckon them. أو ما علمت بأن أهل السنة الغرباء حقا عند كل زمان. Or do you not know the Ahl Sunnah are the strangers in every time and in all truth. قل لي متى سلم الرسول وصحبه والتابعون لهم على الإحسان. Inform me, when was it ever that the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam and his companions and the tabi'un, those who follow them in excellence, was safe? من جاهل ومعاند ومنافق ومحاربا بالبغي والطغيان. When were they ever safe from the ignorant, addressing them with ignorance? The one who had enmity, addressing them with enmity. And the hypocrites and those who waged war against them transgressively. When were they ever safe from any of that? تظن أنك وارث لهم وما ذقت الأذى من في نصرة الرحمن. Or is it that you believe that you can be an inheritor of them, meaning that you can have their religion, you can have the sunnah, you have their methodology, and you're not going to taste harm in the path of aiding ar-Rahman? كلا ولا جاهدت حق جهاده في الله لا بيد ولا بلسان. He said, nay, if the affairs like this, you have not truly striven in the path of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, neither with your hand nor with your tongue. So we should not be disheartened by the strangeness that we have been prophesied by our Prophet alayhi wasallam will occur and that we will experience. We should not be disheartened by way of that. Rather, the great Imam al-Fudayl ibn Iyad alayhi rahmatullah, he mentioned, اتبع طرق الهدى ولا يضرك قلة السالكين. He said, follow the paths of guidance and don't let these small amount of those who traverse upon it with you sadden you or harm you. وإياك وطرق الضلالة ولا تغتر بكثرة الهالكين. And beware of the pathways of misguidance and don't be deceived by the large amount of people who are upon that way and thus destroyed. This strangeness, ayyuhal ikhwa wal akhawat, will perhaps even afflict the person inside of their own household. Inside of one's own household, you'll find that at times one is striving to be upon what is correct, they're striving to be upon kitab, sunnah, ala fahm salaf, and you find opposition even inside of your own household. And this is the most extreme of what one can find from strangeness, as occurred with the great Imam, the Khalifa of Rashid, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, alayhi rahmatullah. On one occasion, he passed by his wife and he heard her speaking under his breath, Rahana Muttak. May Allah Ta'ala give us relief by way of your death. Because Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he was a righteous man and he enjoined righteousness upon his family. He was a man of asceticism and he enjoined the same upon his family. And thus, this became something that his wife cannot be patient with. And she found this to be somewhat difficult. So she made this dua, may Allah give us relief by way of your death. Upon hearing this, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he said, Ameen. He said, Ameen. Oh Allah, respond to her dua. which is the most intense of what we can find, أيها الأخوة والأخوات, of strangeness. That the person is a stranger, even aside of his own home. But the reality, أيها الأخوة والأخوات, is that this ghurba, this strangeness, is not ghurba في الحقيقة. That's not true and real strangeness. وأهل السنة, أهل السنة والجماعة, the people of truth, they are the servants of Ar-Rahman, and they are the people of its religion, and they are the aiders and the supporters of the deen of Allah Ta'ala. And so therefore, in reality, there is no strangeness for them. But the strangeness that they experience and that they encounter is strangeness when it comes down to the majority of the people. Allah Ta'ala, He has mentioned in His book words that indicate the good end is for the ghuraba. He said, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ أَجْرَمُوا كَانُوا مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا يَضْحَكُونَ. Indeed, those who have committed crimes, they used to laugh at the believers. وَإِذَا مَرُّوا بِهِمْ يَتَغَامَزُونَ. And whenever they would pass by them, they would wink and make faces and mock them. وَإِذَا انْقَلَبُوا إِلَى أَهْلِهِمْ انْقَلَبُوا فَكِهِينَ. And whenever they went back to their families, they would go back to them laughing and mocking and rejoicing. وَإِذَا رَأَوْهُمْ قَالُوا إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ لَضَالُّونَ. And whenever they would see the believers, they would say that these people, meaning the believers, are astray. Imagine this. The kuffar, the pagans, those who worship rocks, those who, as As-Salaf would mention, that they would fashion gods out of dates and oats with their own hands and take these gods along with them in their travels and pray to them while they were traveling, worshiping these gods that they had made out of dates and oats. And whenever their provisions ran out and they became hungry, they would eat their gods. They would eat their gods. These people had the nerve to say that the believers were alone. They were straight. The believers were straight. وَمَا أُرْسِلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ حَافِظِينَ. And they were not sent as watchers or protectors over them. But Allah Ta'ala said concerning the day of judgment, فَالْيَوْمَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنَ الْكُفَّارِ يَضْحَكُونَ. But upon that day, when they meet their Lord, the believers will be laughing at the kuffar. They will have the last laugh. They will have the end. Al-ara'iki yanzurun, sitting upon thrones, looking. This is how the story of the ghuraba ends, with them sitting upon thrones, looking at all things that are pleasing to them, and all wholesome and beautiful sights, and from the best and the best of that which they will be looking at is the face of their Lord Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. May Allah Ta'ala make me and you from those who delight in seeing His noble and beautiful face. May Allah Ta'ala make us to be amongst the strangers. This is that which we wanted to remind our brothers with. Allah Ta'ala was best. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وخير دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
آمين. جزاكم الله خيرا يا أستاذ
حياكم الله
for
وبارك فيكم.
the beneficiary reminder. Indeed, was something which was really needed in this present time of ours. We pray Allah grant you goodness and add it to a scale of good deeds. But Nigeria, there's nothing that will suffice except what we have put forward of our good deeds. Barakallahu fikum. Sorry, there were some questions. I think I can read only 3, inshallah, per your time, if permitted.
It's time for us up here, so I will take one question, inshallah.
Naam, one, okay, inshallah. Naam, okay. Then the one we say, the questioner asks, Assalamu alaikum. Most people do say we have shuyukh in our lands, and these shuyukh, they have graduated from the Islamic universities. But mostly we find the people say they're not upon guidance, they're not upon khair. What is the scale to differentiate between these two. Barakallahu fikum.
Once they come back. The ulama, they say that tazkiyah is arrived at by one of three means. Tazkiyah and the commendation is arrived at by way of one of three means. The first way that we arrive at tazkiyah for an individual, whether he's a student of knowledge or a teacher or sheikh or what have you, is by way of a written or verbal recommendation for that scholar or that teacher or that student of knowledge from one of the ulama. As we would say that the alim when another alim calls him an alim. The scholar when another scholar calls him a scholar. So when you have an explicit recommendation from one of the ulama for a student of knowledge or a teacher or a da'i or a sheikh or what have you, then if that scholar who recommended him is someone who is reputable and is an alim himself, a person of sunnah and righteousness, then we accept his statement and thus we benefit from him. And this is part of us listening to and following our ulama. The second way that we arrive at tazkiyah for an individual is that his contemporaries from the du'at and from the students of knowledge and those who are known to be upon kitab, sunnah ala fahm salaf, those who are known for righteousness and soundness in terms of their manhaj and their aqidah, they are aware of the activity of this student of knowledge and they don't censor him. They are aware of his da'wah and his teaching efforts. And they are his contemporaries. They are aware of him and they don't censor him. Rather, perhaps you'll find them even working with him. And this is an indication that this person is upon khair and can possibly be benefited from. The third way that we know an individual is upon goodness is his actions are a tazkiyah for him. His actions are a tazkiyah for him. They are a recommendation for him. So you look at the reality of what this person is upon, the reality of what he is calling to, and the reality of his aqidah, his manhaj. We're not about titles, we're not about names, we're not about personality, but rather what's his reality? What's his reality? And if his reality is one of khair, one of goodness and soundness and manhaj, sound in his aqidah and his da'wah, then his actions are a tazkiyah for him. And if his actions, his manhaj, his da'wah, his cooperation, and his way is other than that, then we have no need for him. We have no need for him. And we consider him to be amongst those whom we have abandoned and we are not to take from. This is what the ulama mentioned in terms of how we arrive at tazkiyah for an individual and a recommendation for an individual to take knowledge from him. In these days and times, you find that the speakers are many, especially in this promote yourself social media era, wherein anyone who opens up a social media account, he sits in front of a bookshelf and he begins talking to people. The people say, "Oh, he's alim, he's talib ilm, he's this, he's that." And it's as though we have forgotten about these principles. We've forgotten about the words of our salaf, such as Imam al-Barbahari, who said, "Examine closely the words of those whom you hear, especially in your time." Especially in your time. Now we have to examine the people. As Ibn Sirini mentioned, in the hadith deen, and this knowledge is deen. Fanbur, so examine and look at the man from whom you take your religion. Examine him. Don't just look at and start listening to anyone who pops up on YouTube, anyone who opens a podcast or opens a Twitter account or Facebook and goes live and starts speaking about the deen of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And as you mentioned to the people time and time again, you would not entrust your children to some random person who tells you that he wants to watch your kids for you. You wouldn't leave your son, your daughter with some random person who you don't know, where your deen is more precious to you. Our religion is more precious to us than our children. So why would you entrust your children to someone whom you don't know? Rather you entrust your religion to those whom you know, those who have been recommended by the ulama, those who you know have sound manhaj, sound aqidah, and they're up in khair, inshallah ta'ala. So this is what we have to say about this, and Allah ta'ala's best. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم
Jazakumullah
ورحمة
khair,
الله
Ustad. It's for taking time off your busy schedule. Jazakumullah khair. So we will see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.